Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, president of Universal Accounting Center, and this is a podcast dedicated to helping you have what I refer to as the premier accounting firm. We actually focus on those things that are essential for you to actually work on your business, ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, training your staff, onboarding clients, retaining clients, mental health, and so much more. It's here on the show that we bring on the experts to actually share the insights that they have for us to actually work on our businesses so that we can offer quality accounting services and get paid what we're worth. I'm excited for today's conversation. This is a gentleman that I've actually spoken to on a few occasions. He's someone that I've come to know as basically the accountability guy. It's Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt is the co-author of the book, Nobody Cares Until You Do. He is a business owner in Dallas-Fort Worth area, Fort Worth, Texas, that is. And he actually is the executive coach who runs CEO groups for the Dallas-Fort Worth area since 2013. And he brings that experience and wisdom to the people he reaches out to help them with their goals. Robert has been married for 27 years to his beautiful wife, Kathy, and they have two adult children also living in Texas. He has is passionate about his faith, his purpose, his family, and his quest to help people be their best. So, Robert, welcome to the show.
I love that introduction. I'd like to meet me sometime.
Well, let me just say it's your life, so I'm hoping you're enjoying it.
I am enjoying my life. Actually, I really am.
Good, good. Well, what we want to do here is I want to dive into this executive coach and see how it got or brought you to where you are today. What put you into this space? What's that experience like?
Yeah, I've been running the peer groups for quite a few years. When one of my group members said, "I'd like you to do some executive coaching for me," and I said, I'm not a trained executive coach. I have no idea what that is." He says, "You do it every time we go to lunch. You just don't charge me for it."
Uh-huh.
And so I thought, okay, well, if you want it, let's go to lunch more often as long as you're buying. And so we would go to lunch, but he would help me, say, "Well, are you going to write that down?" Yeah, okay, I'll write that down. And then we get together for lunch. You say, "Well, what were the things we talked about last time?" And he was teaching me how to be an executive coach just as we walked through the journey together. And what I found was powerful about it was that as an executive coach, I never tell anyone what to do.
Mm.
You're a successful business owner. You don't need me telling you what to do. But what you do need is to figure out, why aren't you doing what you know you should do? And and my whole world is about accountability. That's why I wrote a book on accountability, because I allow people the opportunity to create accountability in their lives. And so when you have an executive coach, you're creating more accountability. You're doing one-on-one accountability. I don't hold them accountable because nobody can hold anyone accountable. But I've created an environment where they want to self be accountable. And then they say, "Here's what I'm going to do." And I say, "How are you going to do that? What's the first step? What's going to get in the way? When are you going to start?" And I make notes. And then we get together a period later and I go, "How's it going? What's been doing?" And if they're not doing it, we work on that. So it's a really beautiful relationship that I feel like I'm really qualified to do because I ask really good questions. I'm a good listener and I love my clients.
You know, you just hit on the two things that I feel define a great coach, and it's accountability and questions. It's that first ability of asking the right questions that perhaps no one else is
Mm,
asking. But the accountability element, you're right. You can't make people do anything, but when they're accountable to someone, when they have to report back, myself included, I found that when I had an appointment with my coach and it was coming up on the maybe in the next few days, there wasn't this procrastination of, I'll get around to it. It's like, no, no, I've got to
I
get
got
this
to
done
crank
because
it
I've got to
out.
actually speak
That's
up.
right.
I said it was important. I said that it was something that needed to
Right.
be done. And
Right.
then I put it off. I didn't, it was enough of a priority for me to stress it. But at the end of the day, I didn't do it. No, I can't in my own good conscience meet with them again and actually stress how important this was, yet say I didn't do it. So from the
Yes.
accountability point of view, it isn't the getting it done. It's the fact that I have to talk to somebody because it is lonely at the top. So with that being said, I want to talk about accountability. What is accountability? I mean, you've got accountability in business, accountability in life. Tell me what that means.
It's misunderstood a lot of ways. Usually we think of accountability, we think of it as punitive, like I'm going to hold you accountable, like it's some kind of threat.
Mm,
But the simplest definition of accountability is you own it. And the idea that you own it means that you have the power to do anything you want to do with it because it's yours. In our journey, Salem Thai and I co-authored this book together. We list out in this book the things that we've gone through in our own lives where we saw ourselves playing the victim role and we weren't even really aware of it. Nobody says, "I'd like to be a victim." But what they do by their behavior is when they see where accountability is requiring something of you, they fall into four different traps. They blame, they make excuses, they say they can't do anything about it, or they wait and hope it gets better. And none of those things change anything. And frankly, it holds you back as a victim. I experienced this in my own life where my beautiful wife, Kathy, and I ended up $90,000 in debt. And it didn't happen overnight. It was 5 and then 20 and then 30, and it just kept growing year after year. And every year we'd say, "Hi, man, next year the business is going to really open up wide, and we're going to pay all this off." And it just baby stepped. It just never was getting ahead of the thing we had already created. But we weren't owning it, so we felt trapped. We felt a victim, and so we blamed God. We were angry at God for
Mm.
not fixing our bad choices. We were angry at our clients and our business partners, and we felt like, well, there's nothing we could do about it, which was a lie. And so ultimately, we got to a place in our lives where we were so miserable with where we were that going through a really hard change was worth it. And we decided to own it and do something about it. And that's what started the whole change of us truly owning our lives and being really accountable for the first time.
I like how you distinguish between those two things because you brought up the word victim as you were leading up to that term. You described it so very well. There's a distinct difference between someone who is accountable versus someone who has that victim mindset. I'm curious, is there a way to actually help, especially when you're working with peers and maybe perhaps employees, help them move beyond that victim mindset into more of an
Yeah.
accountability mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you can't hold anyone accountable. So how do you make your employees be accountable?
Hmm.
You model it. That's the biggest thing that leaders don't realize how much people are watching what you do.
Mm.
And you just think, well, I'll just do whatever I want. And even though you say we're going to go this direction, you change your mind, you go over here. You said you're going to do things, you don't do it, but you're in charge. So who's going to fire you? All these things that we're not doing that everyone else goes, well, if he doesn't do it, why should I care about doing it? And so we've not created an environment where people want to be accountable because you're not accountable. So the first thing you have to do is learn to be accountable. And that's different than responsible. We talk about this in the book. Responsible is something goes wrong, you eat it, you fix it, you take responsibility for it, you respond.
Okay.
Accountable is to proactively create what you want. Listen, people get tired of their job, they lose interest. So, since you know it's going to happen, you're accountable. You create something that keeps their interest. You train them so they constantly grow because the world's constantly changing. And if your employees aren't able to keep up with demands, they're going to get frustrated. They won't do a good job. You'll fire them, they'll quit. So, why don't you proactively train them to get the employees that you want? So we as owners, a lot of times we pat ourselves in the back for owning the problems and mistakes that happen. Why don't you proactively avoid the mistakes by creating systems and procedures and training people? Well, that takes time and money. It takes time and money to find a new employee when they quit. Why don't you take that time and money proactively and create the environment, the employees, the situation you want so that you truly own the process?
I liked how you distinguished between accountability and responsibility, the response element to that, the proactive nature of the accountability. That was very empowering because what it does is it says that we can be proactive and get ahead of these situations and be, more importantly, a planner. So I like that element. Now, as you're defining accountability, you all but did this, but I'm wondering, are there steps that you can actually follow that would allow someone to actually be more proactive?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first half of the book is being aware of the traps that hold you as a victim when you have a chance to be accountable, and then recognizing them and how to move past that. But at some magical point in your journey, like us, you say, "Look, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're broke, unhappy with your marriage, fat, your business sucks, your employees are nobody cares unless you care enough to do something about it." And when we cared enough to do something about it, we changed our lives. And so at that moment, when you decide, okay, nobody cares, now what am I going to do? Now I'm going to acknowledge the reality of where I'm at. I'm going to embrace the suck. I'm going to find a solution and I'm going to make it happen. And that process is rinse and repeat for everything you go through. So in our case, we owed $90,000. Well, the knowledge reality is we're never going to get out of debt like this. No Dave Ramsey style is going to get us out of debt at the pace that we're continuing to add to our debt. And so we had to make a change. So we decided to sell our house. We had equity in our home, and that was a very drastic thing. But that the reality is we had equity. We could do that. So we did. We embraced the suck. This is going to suck to sell our house. It did suck. And telling people in our family and my clients, hey, I've not done good with my finances. I need to take ownership for this. I need to change my life and start over. I embraced that suck. We found the solution. We got a real estate agent. We got the house to where it could be sold. We found a place to rent, which is where we live today. And we started over again. And so we sold the house, we closed, and we paid off all the debt come April of 2020. When COVID shut down the world, we were debt free. And the peace that I had in my heart was so amazing compared to the way I'd been living for years. It was dramatic. And that is the way that we want people to address all their issues they face, is that whole process of being aware of the traps, coming to the realization that you got to own it, and then there's a plan to get out of it.
So, what are some of these traps that traditionally people will fall into?
Those are those four things I mentioned briefly about they make excuses, they blame, they say they can't do anything about it, or they wait and hope. So for us, we blamed we blamed God. We're like, God, why are you not taking care of us? Kathy would say, when's God going to bless your business? And I'd say, I don't know. I mean, year after year. The reality is he had blessed my business. I had great clients. I made great money, but I didn't use my money wisely, and therefore we had problems with it. And then we made excuses, the economy, the government, all these things, the franchise I work with, all these excuses of why we weren't successful the way we should be, at least to keep up with our spending habits. And then we said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, it's just debt. What are you going to do? I mean, I can't fix this. I can't sell my house. That's not even an option. What are you talking about? Well, it's not I can't, it's I won't. And the next time you say I can't do something, switch the word I won't and see how it feels.
Yeah.
Because if you told your friends, I won't do that, they'll be like, why? Why don't you do that? You should do that. But if you say, I can't, they're like, oh, yeah, that's unfortunate. And they'll
Yeah.
commiserate with you and they'll keep you as a victim. And then the fourth one is you wait and hope. And year after year, next year it'll be I'll make minimum payments on my credit cards. I'll get by. I mean, I'll work it out with my wife, even though we're fighting like crazy. It'll be fine. I'll buy her some flowers. These kind of silly things that we kick at the can down the road and it never gets better. Those are the four traps that people fall into.
I'm glad you recap those, because one of the things that I find interesting is so often when we get into that I can't state or that victim state, we start blaming. And more importantly, what we start to realize is these things are out of my control. And you start to feel as if I can't do anything about it, when in reality, they are in your control. You can make a difference. And these things are things that you should be changing. And so all of a sudden, when you have that switch, you all of a sudden take control, you become accountable, and more importantly, start making the changes that are necessary to get you out of the situation you're in. One of the things that I think is very powerful is the fact that as an executive coach, you're helping these CEOs recognize that they have more control over things than just the business. So that's powerful. So the next thing I want to talk about then is something that you were alluding to, but I don't know that you were really diving into. And here's where I want to go, is this elusive work-life balance. It's the fact that there's a lot that I'm responsible for, a lot that I'm accountable for, but at the same time, I've got to balance these things or juggle these things, at least to be happy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was really the catalyst for us deciding to get out of debt, was this quest to have the life we really wanted. There is no such thing as work-life balance. And people who try to chase it, you're always frustrated because you're never getting enough of either one of them. And we learned years ago through our CEO groups that you'll never have work-life balance. So we just decided, let's work on being one person everywhere. Then if I'm one person everywhere, I can be at work or at home and I can seamlessly pop in and out of those two things and nothing's a big deal. But if you have to amp up to be a jerk at work and you take that home, the family doesn't like that. And if you have to try and come from the mindset of home to amp up at work, it's exhausting. And so just be one person all the time. That was the solution we came to start this process. It still never dealt with the problem of overload. And most people run on overload. They run on overload with their time, with their finances, with their health, and with their emotions. And so we learned the principles of creating margin in our lives. And I taught this to all my clients 6 years ago, and we've been applying it ever since, and it works. We applied it in our lives. That's what drove us to want to sell the house, was because we weren't having the life we want. The stress of having our finances on overload weighed heavy on us, which affected our emotions, which affected our relationship. The fact that I would work day and night, literally, just to try and get a little bit ahead of the debt was exhausting to me. And then that drained my emotions again. And then because I was doing all this stress affected my body. In September of 2019, I had vertigo for 16 days.
Oh my heavens.
Couldn't figure out what was going on. Went to the chiropractor, the doctors, everything we could think of to fix it. It would not go away. And they could not find a solution. And it was God just saying to me, stop being a whiny baby and own your junk. And you're going to kick this can down another year. It's not going to fix it. And it was after September, God finally took it away. I turned to Kathy and I said, we got to sell the house. We just can't delay any longer. So the drive for pursuing the life I really wanted was what really led us to that moment of saying, we got to own this. And so it's easy to be able to have the life you want if you're willing to create margin, because when you don't live with margin, you create overload. Overload is a lack of creativity. It's exhaustion. It's burnout. It's failure. It's mistakes. You don't want to live on overload, but we're used to it because that's how everybody rolls. So that is the step, is to get margin in your life.
I really want to dive into this because I'm relating quite well personally to what you're sharing here. The first thing that you talked about is there's no such thing as balance. I really actually believe that there's no such thing as balance. And that's a whole nother topic that we can dive into. But from there, you went to overload and this margin idea. I am notorious for being overloaded. I overbook my schedule. I put a lot into it. It's just one of those things that I just naturally do. I like being busy. I like having a lot of things on my plate. I like actually having my hands in a lot of things. And it's, it's rewarding. It has its place. But at
Sure.
the same time, that margin you're speaking of is something that I don't have enough of. So let's talk about the margin a little bit. What is that margin I'm looking for?
Well, yeah, what you're not factoring in a living a life of overload that you're just like my clients. I love when I'm busy. I love having the high paced demand of things. You're not measuring the number of mistakes you make compared to if you had slowed down and created room to think about things clearly. We're do it people. We're get it done people. I don't care what hours I got to put in. I'll get it done. But those late hour decision making things are not great. And you work all day, meeting, stress meeting, dinner meeting, come home, say hi to the kids before they go to bed, go back and get on the computer. You're not doing great work late at night. You're missing things. You're at best not creative. You're not on top of your game. And so we got used to living where, hey, I didn't implode. So I'm fine. I'll do it again tomorrow. And we work really long days, stay up, drink, watch Netflix, get no sleep, come back and survive the next day. Hey, it works. Why would I stop? But you're not measuring the quality of your work compared to the quality of your work when you had it with room with margin, where you have room to stop and think, what do I want to say in response to this email? When I get an angry customer that sends me an email, how do I respond to them? How do I respond in a way that shows that I'm accountable for the life I live, that I respect them as a human and I value their relationship? We don't have the bandwidth for that. We just go, you suck. And we send something back in a hurry. So I think that the measurement is not have you survived. The measurement is like, what would your life look like in all areas, not just your productivity at work, but how would my life look like if I actually created a pace that had room for the unexpected things? That when the car breaks down or I hit traffic or a washing machine breaks down, I got to have the money for that. And I run my expenses so tight that there's not even a money to fix a washing machine when it breaks, which causes stress, which affects my emotions, which makes my relationships up. There's a ripple effect. You're not measuring it just because you're surviving.
It's interesting you bring all this up. The way I define it and really believe this is my ability to be present. So perhaps margin and present are similar because when I speak of this, I actually help my clients realize that anytime that they're unable to actually exist in the present, that's the telltale sign that there's an issue and they need to address it. If they're dwelling too much on the past, things that are now no longer in their control because they've happened, or if they're dwelling too much on things that are in the future, maybe feeling as if they need to plan better and so forth, they're missing out on the moment. And that
Yeah,
present
good
is
point.
that moment that is more or less in their life right now that they should be enjoying is passing by. And so what I want to actually stress is perhaps what you're saying is margin is how I refer to being present, because I want to enjoy the here and now. I want to be able to look up and smell the roses and notice the environment I'm in. I want to be able to enjoy the presence of those people who are in my life today, right now, at this time. And so those things are how I start to gauge it. And whenever I'm in a situation where I'm dwelling too much on the past or I'm thinking too much about the future, I'm not sleeping at night because my mind is racing. That
Right.
tells me I've got too much going
Right.
on and I need that margin that you're speaking of that allows me to actually be a little bit more creative, be a little bit more focused, and maybe in tune with what's happening right now. So I'm liking how you describe that. So this brings up a very interesting thing. You spoke earlier about being different types of people. And this is kind of an interesting thing because I have my own opinion on this. I do believe that I am a different person when I'm at church versus when I'm at home versus when I'm at work versus when I'm with my friends at a social event. If I'm perhaps at let's say a family reunion or I'm at a resort somewhere vacationing, I'm different people, but I don't think we're saying the same thing. I don't think I'm a different person in the sense that I'm different in the sense that people wouldn't recognize me. It's just when I'm at work, I have to make decisions. I'm the one in charge. The buck stops with me. When I go home, I can relax. The buck doesn't stop with me. My wife runs the show. She decides what's happening there, and I respect that fact. But also, when I go to church, I'm in a very different situation. I'm not the one leading the congregation. I'm not the one that's in control. I don't need all the attention. I don't need to draw attention to myself. And so I'm there more in more of a, let's say, a worship situation. So all these situations are situational. So I do believe I am a different person. But to your point, I don't think my character changes. I don't think my personality changes. What would you say to that?
Well, I think you're doing something different, but you should always be the same person everywhere you go.
Hmm.
it- who I am is I'm caring and focused and driven and fun. Those traits, those things, that the nature of I'm a child of God. I'm redeemed. I'm I'm a loving father. All the pieces of me that I am still are what I bring to work, are what I bring to when I hang out and have beers with the guys at the bowling alley. It's the same guy at church, the same guy in my neighborhood. I'm still me, but I'm doing something different. I think the way that you run around living your life should be the same, although you're doing something different while you're doing it. You still do it with who you are. So I just think the problem is too many people try to amp up to be something they're not, and this
Mm,
causes a stress point inside of them. There's this incongruity, and their
yeah.
spirit is under duress. So when I'm at work, I've learned unless I can yell at my employees, they'll goof off and they won't get work done. So I become this total tyrant because that's what I've learned to have to do to get things done. In reality, you have to learn a different way to get your team to behave. You have to hire and train them. You have to communicate well. You have to listen to them. You have to find out, why are they not working? Do we not have systems and procedures that allow them to do it? Have you not given them clear and compelling communication as to why they're doing it? You have to own all this stuff. But too many people just revert to, I'll just be an ass. And that's not who you really want to be. It causes a stress for you all day long. And the reputation you build and the things you have to clean up afterwards, it's just incongruent. So I've found really truly being one person, but doing different things at different places, still as that one person. It really is the way it's consistent. I'm really good at being me. I'm just going to take me to church and me to my neighborhood and me to the bowling alley. I'm going to be me everywhere.
I like that because I can relate to that. That's something that I think is congruent with what I was speaking of earlier, because I don't feel I'm a different person on Sunday than I am on Monday. And so I do believe that if you were to run into me in a work environment, whether I'm at work or if, let's say, I'm at a social setting or with family, I don't think I'm a different person. So I don't think somebody would be like, well, that's not the person I interact with. That's not the individual I know. No, I'm the same person. And so to your point, I think I do have that balance or that congruity, so that or continuity. So one of the things that I'd like to then bring up is faith, because I know faith is a big part of who you are. And you talk about carrying your faith on your shoulders so that you can really be that same person everywhere you go. How has faith manifested itself in the work environment for you?
It's well, besides giving me peace and a way to look at things without freaking out when things go bad, I recognize that God has a plan for my life and He's in control. And so when things don't go my way, as if I had some great plan in the first place, when things don't go my way, I don't freak out. I also know that I'm here to serve Jesus. He died on the cross for me and gave me eternal life, forgave my sins. The only deal is that He wants me to walk with Him and follow His ways. So when I look at how I spend my money, my time, the relationships that He brings my way, I create margin in my world so that when someone needs my time who's out of a job, I have room to meet with them. When someone needs some money that God was so kind to give me, I can give some of that money because I've created margin where I can have a little room for the unexpected things. When someone needs help moving and I have to go help them move their furniture because they're moving, I have a body that can handle moving furniture. So I've created health. And all these things give me the emotional bandwidth to be able to love and serve people the way that God would have me be, with because my emotions are not overloaded. And doesn't God deserve the right to interrupt your day, your money, your health, your finances? And God would say, donate to that. I'd like to use some of the money I gave you for that. Give that guy some of your time and listen to his problems about his marriage so you can care for him and love him the way I love you. These are the reasons you create margin. So God has the right and the freedom to interrupt your life with your time, money, health, and emotions. And that is a way I can live out my faith every day. I don't go to work with my clients and pass out tracts. I'm being a representative of Christ by the way I listen and care for them and be honest. And all the biblical values that we follow and understand, those are great things to bring to work. You turning off your faith to go to work would be a foolishness, because all the great things that come out of the Bible, we should bring to work and be that way. So I think living out my faith has made me a better human, has allowed me to care for the world around me better, and it's more fun.
Amen to that, because one of the things that I think you're speaking of is being a good disciple. It's when people look at you, they see those characters, those principles that Christ was trying to have us each emulate. And so those things are just naturally then who we are. And people are then gravitated to who we are because of the spirit we have about ourselves. And one of the things that I'd like to just kind of point out is I do believe that the miracles among us can be done by the angels among us, which is God working through each of us to help one another. So that's one of the things that I think is powerful, as you were explaining, that those opportunities present present themselves. And if you're in tune with the spirit, you'll have those inclinations as to when to best serve and help those around you. So very well said. Now, as it relates to your CEO strategies, those things that you do, what are those top 5 traits that you've spoken of that actually you find in good, successful CEOs? I know there's 5. What are those?
Yeah, I always want to make sure I represent these well because I think I'm not standardizing how a person behaves, but there are
Mm,
5 key things that people I've seen who are successful CEOs always do. They're always learning. The world is constantly changing. If you are not learning, you are falling scarily behind. It's probably not the word, dangerously behind.
dangerously.
Um,
There you go.
the second one is you make decisions. They don't always make the right decision or a perfect decision, but they make decisions.
Mm.
And sometimes it's hard to make a decision. You can get overwhelmed with emotions, but you got to make a decision. People are counting on you. The third thing to do is they own it. When they make a decision, it's a bad one, they own it. And hopefully they're being proactive in nature to create what they're looking for and own the process to create the result they want. But nothing's perfect. Sometimes things don't go the way you plan, but you own that. That's what responsible CEOs do. The fourth thing is that they're pouring into other people. I don't believe you can be a CEO if you're the most busiest employee, the most valuable employee in the company. I don't think you're leading well. I think you need to pour into your team, develop them, grow them, and empower them. And then the fifth thing is that they drive the results, but they don't do the results. If you really want to have a team that is empowered, that can grow, and someday let you step aside and either replace yourself with someone else or sell the business, you have to empower them. But you have to drive the results, not do the results, not get the results, but drive that by setting goals and training and creating processes and moments where you're pushing us forward to get the work done. Those are the things that I think great CEOs do consistently.
As you're describing that, I can definitely relate because some of the things that you were sharing are the ones that I would also characterize. When you're speaking of learners, I find that good CEOs are curious. They're always
Mhm.
wondering. And that's where I think a lot of the entrepreneurial things present themselves, is because they're always wondering, is there a different, better way to do something? And so that curiosity more or less complements that learning that you were describing. And then that decisiveness that you were talking about, they're making decisions, is so key. They are decisive. They actually make a decision and hold to it. And oftentimes it may not be the best decision, but they've made a decision and they're going to hold to it only because of the fact that they're going to see things through. And I think that's powerful to them, because a lot of times people will quit and give up, and they'll actually delay things because of hesitation. They're decisive. They're moving forward. And then that last thing that you were talking about, I do believe that good leaders actually inspire others to do things. They don't need the glory themselves. They're wanting other people to get things done. They're willing to delegate. And that's one of the things that I think makes for a great leader, because they're able to inspire and give direction and work towards something with others. And more importantly, serve them to achieve those goals that they're needing to accomplish. So very well said with all that. So as you've been doing the CEO type coaching, what typically holds an individual back from embracing the things that you're talking about? Where do you find people who are, at least they're open to this, but they fail to implement this? What holds them back sometimes?
Fear.
Mm,
We use the word comfort zone, but comfort zone is another word for fear.
hmm
It's funny if you told someone, "Well, that's outside my comfort zone," they go, "Oh yeah, I get it." But if you say, "Well, I'm afraid to do that," they go, "Why? Why are you afraid?" Because nobody wants to use that word. But the reality is, it's awkward to invite people into your journey and to say, "I want to be the best leader I can be, and I'm going to volunteer what I'm doing before I do it, and tell everyone this is my plan. What do you guys think?" And let people pick holes in it before you roll it out to the team, because it's one thing to come back and say, "Man, I screwed up, I need help," and we can all share what we've learned that can hopefully be valuable to help you where you're at. But it's way smarter to go, "This is what I'm thinking about doing. What have I missed?" And we get so comfortable because we thought about it for a long time. Most leaders I know really think things through before they act on it. And so they've worked out, they've thought of all the details, they're emotionally ready. Actually, they're invested in it by now because they've been thinking about it for so long. This is good. This is good. We're gonna do this. Oh, go. And then they start running and they forget stuff that is right in front of them, but they just didn't see it. So having other people who will call out, challenge, ask questions. We never tell each other what to do, but we ask, what is this going to cost? And I thought you were going to slow down and take more time to be with your kids. How is this going to match with that? And let them have a chance to see all the sides before they commit.
Now, earlier we were talking about accounting and how important you feel that is, and how they need to have a voice as it relates to the CEOs. So I'm curious, as part of your coaching, how often are you involved with the accounting, and what advice would you have for my listeners who are those accounting professionals working with the CEOs and servicing them, if you will, as to helping them run successful businesses? What are your thoughts, and what are your words of wisdom, if I may?
Yeah, I would love to encourage the people who are in the role of guiding someone through their finances, whether it's the CPA or whether it's the accounting or a bookkeeper, whatever your role is, that someone is counting on you to guide them in this area. If you're not being truly accountable to the reason why you were chosen, not just, well, he's only paying me to do this, or they're not paying me for that. You're in the role as a trusted advisor, which is a often overused term, but you're a trusted advisor. And so if you're not advising and you're just doing work, I think you're not doing the role that you've been chosen to do effectively. You need to be, no, I can't say you need to be. I would encourage you to choose to be accountable, which might mean you need to say things like, look, you're spending way too much money on this. This is not the kind of profit margin a company should have. These expenses are not what are aligning with the kind of growth that you said you want to have. Because if you're not saying the hard things and you're worried about losing a customer over it, you're going to watch them tank. Cash is king. And if you're seeing someone spend stuff on things, they don't need to spend it because they're in a good mood and they want to do this, there's no justification, and you don't call them out, that's on you. Now, you don't have to take accountability for it because well, it's not my company. That's his decision. But you're in a place as a trusted advisor. Some of the best relationships I've had come from those people that are trusted by the CEO and the business owner, the lawyer and the CPA, the accountant. Those roles, it's very vulnerable. Money doesn't lie. When you see their numbers, the rest of the world doesn't see that. They say, we're doing $14 million a year with only 1% profit. They don't see that part. They just see the $14 million a year. You need to be someone who speaks up and speaks truth. Otherwise, you're really not being accountable to the opportunity that God gave you. That person is counting on you to say truth in their lives, even if it's a little bit of a challenging conversation.
Beautifully said. I love it. It's very much akin to what I stress oftentimes, that as accounting professionals, there are certain roles that we need to be filling for our clients. And it's going beyond the bookkeeping, the accounting, going beyond the tax planning, the preparation. It's getting more into that CFO advisory space that I believe you're speaking to, which is we have a voice, we have a perspective of the business. We're seeing things that they may not notice as they're running their companies day to day. And we need to actually have the courage to speak up and share things that we're noticing that are trends and evolutions that are occurring in the business that they may not be necessarily aware of, although they're experiencing. So what we need to do is have the courage, like you just mentioned, to speak up. So very well said. I appreciate that. I want to go to your wife and your family now. Clearly, this has been a journey that you've been on for some time, and in running your business, there were those financial difficulties. Looking back, how do you feel your wife has been instrumental into the success that you had, the support that you were receiving, and so forth? What did that enable you to do?
Oh my gosh. My wife is my best friend. She's the kindest, most beautiful person I've ever known. And when I told her I can't live like this anymore in 2019, at the beginning of the year, we always did our plans for the year and we whiteboarded what do we want our lives to look like. And we put all these things on the board and they said, okay, we only choose one. What's that going to be? And together we said, listen, we want to make Jesus proud of us because he died for us and he loves us. He's got a plan for us. So how would it look like to live the life that he would be? Good job, good life. And we recognized we weren't living that way. The stress was just ripping us apart. And so I said, if we can't fix this, if God doesn't drop a big bag of money in the backyard this year, then we're going to sell the house. And she said, okay.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know any other dude's wife who would be like, okay. Well, that's my wife. She believes in me. I don't abuse that. I've honored her in our journey so that she doesn't have to have doubts in me. Not that I've been perfect in my decision making, but my wife has always supported the decisions I make as her husband. I check with her, I ask her, we work together. But at the end of the day, I'm accountable. I'm creating the outcome that we agreed we wanted. And sometimes those are hard decisions. This is a tiny house. We had a giant house before with a movie theater upstairs and all this cool stuff. And we sold it all. None of it would fit in this rental. And we came in here with folding chairs and folding tables and beds and dressers. And that was it. And during COVID, you couldn't even buy furniture. So we made a few bucks after the deal was done and we paid off all the bills. We couldn't get any furniture. So for a month, we sat in folding chairs. And, It was okay, but she never complained once. And she was creative and found solutions and prayed for me and supported this. I could not have done it without her. And she's just amazing.
That's beautiful. So many of the conversations I have someone that's in the wings, someone that is supportive, someone that is positive, someone that believes in us. And I think that part of the story is sometimes overlooked, that a lot of the successes we have are because of the support we receive. And there's always that adage of behind every great man, there's a great woman kind of a thing. But I think one of the things that's so powerful here is sacrifices are being made. People have to do things that are difficult. And it's nice to know that you've got someone that has your back, that believes in you. And that's really comforting, especially when you go home to that. So I really appreciate it. The other thing I wanted to ask was about your children. Here they are watching you go on this journey of being an entrepreneur, serving the CEOs, if you will, as an executive coach. What do you hope that they've learned, or what do you believe they've learned as they've mirrored and or looked at what it is you're doing in your business?
I don't know. They're at the age now where they just don't talk to me a bunch about the things that they're going through. They want their independence, and they're great kids. They're honest and kind. But I'm now this fractional dad who gets called upon when the dishwasher doesn't work or when they don't know how to pay their taxes. But otherwise, they've put a big stiff arm on my involvement in their day-to-day activities, and I've not pushed on it because I want them to have their independence. But I have shared my journey with them every step of the way. When we moved from California in 2010 to move to Texas to start over, we all decided as a family that we were going to do this. And I told the kids, this is why we're going. California's broken. We got to get out of California. And Texas is the land of opportunity. And here's why we're going. And I invited them to give me input. And we did it together as a family. And then over the years, when I've lost a job, they knew, hey, I lost a job. I want you to pray for me as we do this. But I've taught them by modeling how a man goes to God and trusts him through those journeys. And so I know that they have good principles, and I know that they've seen this. I don't know what they'll be like when they face really hard times.
Mm.
My daughter is super responsible and mature. My son's 22. He's a bit of a squirrel. And so, because he's a boy too. And so he's doubled down on all that, but he's got a great heart. And I think his great heart will protect him through the journey, but he'll probably bump his head on the road quite a bit as he gets out there. And I'm always going to be there as their dad to support him when they want to invite me into it. But otherwise, I'm giving them a wide berth right now to let them make decisions.
Very interesting. Well, hopefully they'll actually take the lessons that you've learned over the years and apply them so that they don't have to learn those same lessons themselves. So
I hope so.
yeah, that'll be something powerful. All right. So the last question I have for you is, if you were to speak to your younger self as you were going out and taking these risks, starting your business, becoming an entrepreneur, serving the CEO community, I'm curious, what advice would you have to your younger self? What would you say?
Don't be lazy. I think as I look back at my life, I was a very lazy kid, and I never really outgrew it. I learned to amp up and get things done so I wouldn't lose a job or fail miserably in some area, but I only did it because I had to. There was
Mhm.
no internal drive. And I've always done the very least I had to do to get by. And that reflected in the quality of the work I did early in my career and the struggles I had working through relationships. I think if I had understood the principles of accountability as a young man, I would have proactively done the things to build the marriage I wanted, to build the finances I wanted to go to a job and not sit around and go, well, what do you want me to do? But to go and think about, what does this company need? And how do I become that person? And how do I drive because of my own initiative? I just didn't have it till way later in life, when I had to grow up, when I was forced to step up and lead in those areas. But I think I missed a lot of opportunities, maybe till I was 30.
Mm.
There's a lot of years that were just kind of there. So I think not being lazy, and even today, I encourage my clients, don't be lazy. I know that word's so offensive, but I use it on purpose. If you know you're supposed to be doing something and you're not doing it, you're lazy. And if you know you shouldn't be doing something and you do it anyway, you're lazy. And call it whatever you want. But if you call it lazy, that's offensive. And maybe you'll have the motivation to stop doing it.
Love it. Very good. Very good. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and one that I've been looking forward to. And I'm glad that we've had it, because I believe that there's a number of great insights in here for my listeners. So let me just kind of recap a few things, and I'm going to come back to you for a closing thought. And before I do the recap, one of the things that I'd like to share with the listeners is there is actually an opportunity here to go to the episode description and get a copy of Nobody Cares. It is a book that I believe you'll benefit from. Nobody Cares Until You Do is something that you need to read. You need to understand, especially as it relates to running your business. So go to there to the episode description description and get a copy of the book. In fact, actually, Robert has a special offer for my listeners. What is it, Robert, that you'd like to share?
Yeah, if you go to nobodycarespod.com, you can fill out the contact form there. Use the code word Roger, and I will mail you a copy of my book for free.
Perfect. And that's for my listeners only. So take advantage of that opportunity. Now, as it relates to the show today, I think the conversation has been amazing. I liked how we started with accountability, the difference between being accountable and actually being responsible. I thought that was powerful just to see that distinction, but then also the word victim came into that. And I believe those character traits, those ways of living life are very important to understand. And the distinction between a victim and somebody who is accountable, those traits as to what it is somebody's actually doing as they're experiencing life, and how to transition from one to the other. The other thing I thought was very important was this idea of work overload, this work-life balance and being overload. He's talked about margins, more or less pausing. I spoke of being present. I thought that was very important to realize that as executives, we oftentimes do push ourselves. We do fill our days. We find ourselves busy. We like that. I like that. And one of the things that we need to do is more or less pause, find that time to actually reflect, be more creative, and at the same time create those spaces that allow us to be a little bit more in the moment, if you will. And those margins I thought was a good part of the conversation. Another thing to also address where he shared various traits of CEOs, and those traits I thought were valuable, those things that we can be more conscious of being curious and listening and learning, being someone that is actually willing to be a decision maker, decisive, being willing to delegate. All of those things that he shared there earlier were ones to perhaps go back, re-listen to, and see how you can implement those in your life. So I'm hoping you took good notes there. If you did, if you didn't, go back and rewind and re-listen. Now, as it relates to the conversation, we also then dove into family. And I really liked how with some of the hard decisions that need to be made, he recognized that he had the support of his wife, Kathy. He was able to realize that when things were needing to be done, he had the support he needed to make those difficult decisions and not regret them, not be chastised for them, but actually move forward. I also appreciate the fact that he brought faith into this, having a conversation where we're able to recognize that faith is a part of who we are. And more importantly, we can be true to ourselves on a day-to-day basis and not be chameleons based on the situation. Very important conversation, simply because of the fact that we too often do find ourselves affected or impacted by the environments we're in. And if we're true to our characteristics, especially when we're God-fearing, it enables us to actually be disciples, be someone that other people can look towards and look for inspiration. And I think that's very powerful. So I appreciated that part of the conversation as well, Robert. So with all that said, what would you like to leave as a final thought?
Wow. This year is the year of intentional living. I'm working with all my clients to step back and say, if you're to create your life, what would it look like? Where is it now? And what do we need to do to get there? That includes work, but it is not just about work. And so be intentional about the life you want to live. It's your life. Own it. That's what accountability is. I mean, at some point, you're going to be accountable for the life you live, whether you like it or not. The Bible tells us every single person will stand before God at some point, and that's the only person in this world you will ever be accountable to is God. Everyone else, you can kind of lie and weasel around, but there's no escaping our future. So own the life you really want. Pursue the life you really want. Be intentional because it's your life and it should be one that is lived out intentionally.
Very good. I like that, the intentionality of it all and realizing that you will be accountable. Very good. So here's what I'm going to do to wrap this up. First of all, if you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe to the podcast. We would like to have you as a constant listener, someone that comes back and joins us each and every week as we dive into these various principles to, in fact, have the premier accounting firm in your area. In addition to that, there are a number of things that you need to be aware of, such as with Universal Accounting. We are the sponsors of this podcast. There are various things that you need to be aware of as it relates to support programs and basically coaching. So if you'd like more information as to things that we've discussed on the show, things that you can be doing in your business, check out universalaccountingschool.com or give us a phone call, 801-265-3777. In addition to that, I'd like to point out that the podcast actually has playlists, things that we've gathered over the years where we've put together basically themes or highlights that you can go dive into. You can go to universalaccounting.com and in the navigation, find there the podcast section where we have highlights that you can go binge listen to. These are playlists that are actually focused on topical things that I'm sure you're dealing with today, ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, training staff, mental health. Go dive into those things that are relevant to you right now and actually hear what the experts are saying as to what it is you can do to address those things today. In addition to this, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference. It's where we get together with our peers, basically those individuals like us who are owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses, and listen to the experts, hear what they have to say from the stage as to what we can be doing to have the best year ever in our firm. And in addition, as we have these conversations with our peers, we build relationships, new friendships, and also find opportunities to actually collaborate, help our clients with various things where we can commingle our services and better service the needs of our clients. In addition to that, you also get to meet my staff, myself, all of us who are committed to helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal. So take advantage of this opportunity. Go to the episode to the navigation at universalaccounting.com and find their GrowCon and get your ticket today to join us for the conference. It's each and every year. You do not want to miss it, and I look forward to seeing you there. Lastly, as it relates to this, if you're interested in more information, more free resources, things to assist you, go to universalaccounting.com and check out the free resource section. There's a variety of ebooks, resources, tools, white papers, just a number of things that you can take advantage of today as it works, as it revolves around running your business. So with all that being said, always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is Universal. Take care, have a great day, and be safe out there. Robert, that was awesome.
Dude, you're a machine. Just the end summary alone is mind-boggling how you can remember and focus on all that.
Well, thank you. I'm listening.
I am too, but I can't recall it the way. It's a difference between hearing and recalling. You recall well. Good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So here's what I'm going to have you do. That little promo piece that I mentioned in the chat, I'm going to have you record that for us now.
This is Robert. Do I just go right away?
Yep, you just go.
This is Robert Hunt. It was fun to record with Roger on this episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. And we discussed about how accountability can change your life, how having margin in your life can give you the kind of life you want to have, what great CEOs do. There's a lot of good content we were talking about. And specifically your role as an accounting person, how you have the opportunity to look out for your clients by being accountable. So I hope you'll listen to this, enjoy it, give us some feedback.